Welcome everybody to this fourth outreach event. So maybe Tamara, can you please start the slide? So here is the agenda. This is quite packed, so this is why we are starting right on time. So we will make a welcome and introduction so we can, all about the Europeana Aggregators Forum and in which context this event takes place. You will also have a welcome by the Europeana initiative, and then you will have an introduction on data ingestion and publication at the Europeana Foundation. You will have a demo about the Métis Sandbox. One first panel bringing together aggregators to speak about how they use and work with the tools to publish data and using the tool services provided by the Europeana Foundation. A short break, then another demonstration, and then a second panel, and then we will have the conclusion of the event. So during the panel, you will have the opportunity to ask questions, and we will try to tackle those at best we can. So some words about the steering group. So it's myself, I'm Marie-Véronique Leroy from the French Ministry of Culture, and I'm the chair of the Europeana Aggregators Forum. My vice chair is Kerstin Arnold from the APEF, so the European Portal for Archive Aggregator, and Tom Miles is also part of the steering group, representing the Europeana Sounds Aggregator. And then you have Henning Scholz and Susanna Malikerova from the Europeana Foundation, also part of the steering group. You can go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So as I was mentioning, this is the fourth event of this series. You had the first one about the whole process of aggregation, really introducing into the concept of aggregation. So it was last year already. And then we had another one on data collection, another one earlier this year about data processing, and now the kind of the cherry on the cake when you do all this work about data publication, actually. So this is what we will address, and you can already save the date for the final one next year on the 20th of June. That will be about data dissemination and reuse. You will have the slides after the event, and actually the play buttons are clickable, so you can have a replay of the previous episodes if you want to. You can go to the next slide. And now this is the moment where I leave the floor to my colleagues from the Opera Initiative, and I will leave the floor to Rob first to present the ENA. Rob, up to you.
Good morning, everyone. Could I just see this, the slide, please? My slide. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. A very few words about the Europeana Network Association and its relationship with the aggregators and the Aggregators Forum, which we see as partners in an ecosystem. And I think this is something which is becoming more and more symbiotic as things develop. So ENA is a key player in the so-called three-pillar Europeana initiative, the foundation and the forum, and also now obviously around the data space for cultural heritage. We have 4,500 members at the moment and still growing. And important to say here, well over 2,000 of those are from cultural heritage institutions. And as we will hear, I think, more about in the panel today, one of the panel sessions today, cultural heritage institutions are absolutely key touch points in the aggregation process, not to mention being a major source of content and metadata itself, but in other ways too. And I think it would be interesting to hear how that works in specific circumstances. We also see ENA members from education, research, and from the creative sector as a future bridge to data reuse within the context of the data space for digital heritage. It's worth mentioning, I think, that of the 7 ENA communities, several of them, including, for example, technical, Europeana Tech and Impact, play an important role in supporting and helping aggregators to innovate and develop through the various task forces that we've had. Many of these, some of these have been helping organized jointly with the Aggregators Forum, and several of them, of the recent ones, have been around issues to do with data. And I should not go away without mentioning a new initiative, which is also being done jointly with the Aggregators Forum in a cooperative context, and also with the Europeana Foundation. This is called country groups. We're calling this country groups, and this is intended. I can't go into much detail in the time available here, but it's intended to intensify the support and awareness available in member states, within member states, for the data space at national level then. And so we have 3 pilots. To begin with, we have 3 pilots planned to begin in 2024 in Bulgaria, Italy, and Slovenia. And these will be evaluated at some point during the course of next year with a view to rolling this initiative out, assuming that it works well and is productive to other countries. Okay, so thank you very much, Marie. That's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob, for keeping the time. You will have all the details, and of course you have the link, and Rob is of course available for any questions. Thank you. And now I give the floor to Harry Verwaayen, DG of Europeana Foundation.
Yeah, thank you, Marie, and good morning, everyone. It's really good to be here. So the foundation is the operator of the services, the Europeana services, and deploying the data space for cultural heritage together with a consortium of 18 partners, including many aggregators. So we're going to talk a lot today about data publication. And I think if you want to consider publishing your data on Europeana, the data space, you also need to have a fundamental understanding why you're doing it. So I think that's the central thing I want to bring into the conversation today. I can have the next slide. Of course, the principal reason for anyone to digitize the data should be that you can reach new audiences with it. And by participating and publishing on Europeana and in the data space, you will be able to reach an international audience. I think that's the primary reason why you should consider joining us. Europeana.eu is our principal website. We attract several million people there. If I can get the next slide. And more we're investing in storytelling. Last year we had over 1.4 million visits to blogs and exhibitions. So we'll be able to combine your data with other types of data and create pan-European stories. Next slide. Of course, that only works if those stories are also readable in your own local languages. Rob already told about the localization efforts with the country groups. Similarly, we're investing heavily in getting your data also readable and understandable in different languages. So last year, we already started publishing stories in many more languages, and we'll continue to do that in the coming years. In the next slide, you'll see that we also have many outreach events similar to these, where we build capacity between us about how to creatively reuse that material in other settings. So the Give It Up Festival is one at the end of each year. We have a digital storytelling festival that you can participate in. And recently we've invested in what we call an online creative residency, where we invite people to basically learn new skills about how to reproduce data and tell different stories. So finally, I want to bring your attention to the fact that if you publish with us, in the next slide, all the enrichments that we'll be doing on the central platform, including translations, annotations, and so forth, will be made available back to you via our APIs and other mechanisms. So there's really a loop that we're constructing. When you contribute your data, we also do that. Hopefully you do that with also the expectation you'll get something rich back. This is what I wanted to share with you today. You will hear later from my colleagues about all the opportunities to understand what happens to your data. If I can have the next and final slide. We are investing heavily in making sure that you have statistical data that you can understand. You'll get proper support, resources, training, and so forth, and we'll promote your data wherever we can. So I wanted to leave it here, Marie, and give the floor back to you. Was I in time? No, probably not.
Perfect. Thank you
Yeah.
very much, Harry.
Good. Thank you.
So as you understood, we are trying to keep our welcome and intro short so we can really benefit from the feedback from the aggregators. So I don't lose any more time and present briefly to you the Aggregators Forum, who is organizing this event. So now, since this autumn, we are 42 aggregators, accredited aggregators, so national, domain, and thematic. So you can see the spread on the map here. If you can go to the next slide, please. So a brief resume of what is an aggregator. You will hear more about it later for sure, but aggregators are intermediary between cultural heritage institutions and Europeana, and they are really expert hub, gathering authentic, trustworthy, and robust data and making the efforts to make it accessible through Europeana and then now through the data space that you will hear more about later on. So in most of the cases, there are technical infrastructure, but most of it a service provider, and they are an agent for digital transformation as they are leading many capacity building and best practices activities, so aggregation and really to improve the sharing of data. And they are also the advocate for digital cultural heritage. So as I was saying, there are national, regional, domain, and thematic aggregators. Specifically for the Europeana Aggregators Forum steering group. So we prepare, organize, and share the forum meetings that happen twice a year, one in spring and one in autumn. And we also run some drop-in sessions and outreach events, just like this one. And we also share relevant information and communicate regularly with our members, and we try to gather as much as possible feedback and needs from them. And we also initiate working groups and task forces to lead the work of the aggregators. And of course, we liaise with the rest of the initiative, so namely the ENA and the EF. And we are having many activities all together as a cross initiative as well. So that was it for the presentation of the European Aggregators Forum. Of course, we are available for you if you have any questions. I'm going to thank again Harry and Rob for their short introduction and welcome for this part. And now I'm going to introduce Reana Schwininger-Ladak from the European Commission, DG Connect, who will let you know more about this data space. Thank you, Reana.
All right, thank you, Chair. So a very warm welcome from gray, white, rainy Luxembourg. And so I'm not having any slides today, so I'm going to speak, from. I will welcome you. So my name is Reana Schwininger-Ladak, and I'm in charge of the department which is responsible for the policy and the activities that support the data space for cultural heritage. And I would like to congratulate the leadership of the Aggregators Forum, because this outreach event is part of an important endeavor of building the data space by bringing together the aggregators, the Europeana Foundation, the Europeana Network Association, and all the cultural heritage institutions in their wide diversity for engaging, first of all, for being interested, and then for engaging in digitizing and sharing cultural heritage online and really presenting the full cycle from aggregation to dissemination to reuse, as Marie said previously. So let me start by giving you some overall info on the big picture, especially for those who are joining us for the first time. So the EU has an overall strategy for data. It's simply called the European Data Strategy. Our overall objective of these common European data spaces is to facilitate the data pooling and sharing so that we can exploit data, any kind of data, for multiple reuse in strategic sectors and across those sectors. And cultural heritage is considered by the EU as a strategic sector. So this entails having the appropriate, robust infrastructure to pool, access, share, process, and use data in view of reusing. And of course, this goes hand in hand with the data governance mechanism, the access and use rules, the data frameworks, as well as the needed capacity building, because you don't engage in such things overnight. We really need to bring in, accompany the cultural heritage institutions with the capacity building. So for cultural heritage, more concretely, we are into the second year of the endeavor of building the data space. And we are doing it through a contract for deployment, which is led by Harry's team, by Europeana Foundation. We've had a very good year, a very good first year of transition in relation to all the key features that I mentioned earlier, which are the infrastructure, the data quality, the capacity building. And in relation to aggregation and all the technical work that is needed, we are going to continue this transition from what was before the Europeana data, the digital service infrastructure that ran for a number of years, and take the transition to a data space for cultural heritage. So this means that we will have to align with the data space requirement, which are quite ambitious, which is positioning the aggregation and data governance approaches against a blueprint which is being developed for all data spaces running in the different sectors. It means also identifying gaps and opportunities for the development, especially to further help the aggregators. And the Metis sandbox API, which has been developed by the consortium which is running the deployment, the sandbox is being integrated in the infrastructures by some of the aggregators, and I would really like to encourage you to further do it. We also have 2 pilots for decentralized aggregation, one which is based on linked data and one which is based on the IIIF standards. So this, of course, does not mean that we are going to completely overhaul the aggregation model that we have so successfully created and which is working well, and move away from the current framework. On the contrary, this will bring additional opportunities for data sharing to aggregators and to cultural heritage institutions. So it is about how can we cater to the various needs of our cultural heritage institution landscape, which is very diverse. We are also going to be further developing the data governance strategy and mechanism, notably when it comes to quality and reuse. One of the important areas is also to have solutions for persistent identifiers for the content, for the data which is there. So as you see, a lot of features which are meant to really make the whole process of cultural heritage institution and aggregators engaging more easier. Now, going forward, what is important, and I have 3 key messages. One, which is that data quality is very important. It is essential to make use and reuse happen. We cannot just have poor or average data quality. Data quality is really at the heart of this endeavor. Secondly, of course, it's about any kind of data. However, we have put an emphasis on 3D. So 3D is a priority. And this is exemplified by the Twin It campaign that we have launched. The idea of the campaign is to mobilize all the 27 EU member states to submit 1 3D digitized heritage assets to the data space by the end of the campaign in summer 24. And this selected asset can be cultural heritage at risk, among the most physically visited monuments, buildings and sites in that country, or belong to a category with low levels of digitization. And this will directly support our overall policy framework, which is the recommendation on a common European data space. So I invite all of you here today to become Twin It supporters by applying to use the label and show your support for the campaign, which is very much creating a buzz and bringing in a lot of stakeholders. And we would be very happy to have all of you really part of this campaign and really support the efforts of the Commission. And my third point is about So I spoke about data quality, I spoke about 3D, and my third point will be about the need to work all of it together. So the transition towards this endeavor towards the data space is essential and will happen if we all of us are in together, if we all of us we work together, and if there is a real collaboration of the community. And this means that we have to motivate cultural heritage institutions to share the data. And I think Harry spoke very well about the why it is important, what it is in for you, for cultural heritage institutions. It is essential to make it rewarding for cultural heritage institutions to come in to offer value for you. And I have said it many times, and I cannot repeat it enough, that it is important for cultural heritage institutions to see the value in engaging this endeavor, to get something out of it, and to see that your data is, exploited and, exploited. It's reused. It has the right visibility, and it is reused in different settings, so that your institutions and the quality of your offering shines through it. This is why collaboration and good collaboration along the whole value chain is really key. It is essential. And the welcome pack and the data statistics dashboard that will be demonstrated today are important tools in this direction. So this is what I wanted to say in a few words. I think I have taken a bit more time than I was given, Marie, so really my apologies for that. And I really thank you, the organizers and all the participants, and I wish you a very successful event. And now the floor is back with you, Marie.
Thank you very much, Rihanna. It's like 3 minutes, so it's really fine. Thank you very much all to keeping the time. So now you have, thank you very much, Rihanna and Harry and Rob also for the general introduction. So you will really have the full picture now, the strategic context, the vision, the big picture, and also why it is important to share the data. And now, thanks to Henning Scholz from the Europeana Foundation, you are about to learn how you can do that, actually. Up to you, Henning.
Good morning. Yes, I had to find my microphone back, which I lost doing the journey. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Last time I was talking about aggregation was summer 22, and I wasn't even personally here to present. Today, I have the chance to be here and again talk about aggregation and like Rihanna was saying, also touching upon the value chain that we have developed. And that slide I've already shown like 1.5 years ago when I've talked about what aggregation looks like in a nutshell, starting with cultural heritage institutions, digitizing their collections, cataloging their collections, bringing them all together, package them for online presentation, working with aggregators, as Marie explained, to really also make the most out of the data and then prepared for the publication on the Europeana site. And we've spoken about a couple of those steps that happened along this chain over the last couple of outreach events. And today I would like to zoom in on this third step, the Europeana step in that process. And zooming in on that, we can see, well, divide this basically in 5 steps, so to say, where also all players in that process will be involved. So collaboration here also, as Oriana was mentioning, is key to make this all work between the cultural heritage institutions, which we often abbreviate with CHI, the aggregators, and also the work Europeana Foundation is doing in that whole process. It only works with collaboration, and which also I hope will come across during the panel we have afterwards, where we talk between institutions, aggregators, and the Europeana Foundation about this whole process. So it often starts recently, as we also heard about, with the Meta Sandbox, which is out there since quite a while and picked up very well. And when everyone is happy with how the data performs in the Meta Sandbox, we are starting to pick this up. With Jira, it's labeled our ticket system, where we manage the communication and the processing also in collaboration with the aggregator. And then it goes to the big brother of the sandbox, our Metis tool, which I'm also quickly introducing today, before the data will end up on the Europeana website, where they are published, where they can be accessed also by institutions, by the aggregators, and then are available also for use and reuse, also via the APIs that also Harry mentioned earlier. Zooming in again on the Metis side of the story here, these are the 8 workflow steps that we are running to bring data to life, bring data to publish. The first step is what we call harvesting. It's basically taking your metadata from your repository in the Europeana data model and bring that into our own system to validate the data, to see if it's actually proper EDM compliant with the Europeana data model. And then comes a step that often also leads to question, which is a transformation to an internal schema we are using, which we are using to also separate the data that we added during the data ingestion process from the data that you provide. So when we do any enrichments or amendments of the data, we don't change your source data. We don't change them but we add this information to separate fields and classes to make it clear where they are coming from. I will also talk about the other workflow steps then a bit later. Normalization is an important way to also clean up data in a structured way where necessary. Enrichment, I will touch upon a bit more in detail. And then we also look at your media links that you provide with your data to understand what you are providing, what the technical metadata are, how we can allow users to also understand the quality of the media that you are putting online. And then we go to the indexing step to make things available on the website. That workflow chain, so to say, is not only embedded in Metis itself, but also in the Metis sandbox, which was mentioned earlier today. And in preparation for this event, I actually used a test record that I worked with Andrea Sagic, who is also on the panel later on, which for me was a very special story, so to say. It was shortly after we introduced the Meta Sandbox, and it was out there to be used when Andrea approached me to help him to check if the data that he is preparing for the military voyage library in Belgrade are actually compliant with the Europeana. So it was my chance to actually test the sandbox myself and work with Andrea on this. And within like half a day, we actually have fixed all the issues that we had. And I was very happy to help Andrea to actually get his data ready to be then submitted via the national aggregator in Serbia to Europeana. Similar to our own website, you also see a real preview website behind the sandbox that gives you a good impression of how the data will look like at the end. And Tomas Psolovic will have a demo afterwards to introduce this in a bit more detail. We've spoken about data quality already, and Rian mentioned the importance of this. So I also would like to give a quick introduction here, as the Europeana publishing framework for us sits at it's a foundation of everything we talk about data quality. So we have 8 different dimensions of data quality that are equally important to help to make the most out of your data. the publishing framework works with the principle, the more you give, the more you get. So the higher the quality of the data you're providing, you're offering for your digital collections online, the more can happen in the online world. The more audiences you can reach, the more easier it will be to reach the audiences you would like to reach. The more easier is it also to engage and interact with the audiences. So that's what we have built on. So it's equally true for the quality of the content, as also the quality of the metadata. So the more context you provide in your data, the better your titles and descriptions are, the better the links you have in your data, the more is possible on the discoverability side, but also using and reusing the data is really driven by that. And the Meta Sandbox is also helping to improve your quality. And on the left side, you see the same data set from Andrea Sagic that I worked on. And the original test set he submitted was still in metadata tier 0, so not really high because it was missing language tags. So it wasn't clear that the metadata, the titles and descriptions are in Serbian, which then was also improved. And through the process, Andrea really invested into improving data to a level that is much higher than it was before, and could then publish the data in higher quality also on the website after those successful tests with the Meta Sandbox. And once sandbox processing is completed and you're all happy, then the national aggregator, in that case, the National Library of Serbia, got involved, and I've seen also participants from the National Library in this event. So welcome also to you. And then we start actually the communication with Europeana Foundation and trying to track the process throughout the work on the data set. We're using a well-known platform from Atlassian called Jira to track all our tickets, to manage the communication with the aggregator, exchange feedback, and really get the data ready to publication. That's a screenshot from that ticket from the Militon Voyage library, where we process the data, and then we start involving the big brother of the Meta Sandbox, which is Metas itself, where we basically see the same workflow steps that we have also in the sandbox, from harvesting through the validation steps until we publish those data. In this case, it's a pretty small set, so this process goes very quickly from harvesting to publication. But of course, the larger the data sets will be, also the more time it takes to get them published. And I could talk a lot about all the various workflow steps in here and what is really happening in here. And yeah, but this probably would be too much, and I'm spending the rest of this meeting only for that. So I'm quickly zooming on one element, the enrichment part, which is also often leading to questions. And again, looking at the data set from Andrea, he managed to also provide with his data links to linked open data vocabularies in his data, in this case, geonames, to very clearly and unambiguously tell us that the current location is in Belgrade. And in doing so, during the enrichment process, we kind of go to that link, we fetch the information from that link and add this in our data to also allow and power the multilingual search and multilingual display of, in that case, the current location of Belgrade, which is differently spelled in different countries. This is the example of Hungary. And this is quite important. And with only providing the URI, you can power that multilingual experience nicely. A second element that happens to enrichment is we are extracting from text strings information that builds our entity collection, so to say. And in this example, we are using the name of the institution to create our own identifier internally for that institution, which is then powering at the end the entity collection, and in that case also the websites that every organization gets on the Europeana website. So with that in mind, every organization that has got the enrichment in that case will get such a website on our on the Europeana website. So everything provided from the Müller-Thun-Boyce library, so whatever source we get this will be collected on that page. And that's, I think, a very nice way to also present you as an organization. So just two examples of what happens during the enrichment process. And with this, we are already reaching the end of that journey, going towards the Europeana website, where data will be published, as we've seen already. And that's how it looks like for the set. And logically, I would say, as it's the Müller-Thun-Boyce library, they started with publishing items from and about Müller-Thun-Boyce, and also in very high quality. That's a portrait of Müller-Thun-Boyce, where you can also zoom in and really see that quite like historic photograph of that person. And then you start the journey that we have heard earlier about, talking about use and reuse and so on. I don't have an example from Serbia for this, but I have taken one from the recently concluded Black History Month, where also our partners are using Europeana content to also feature that in blogs, like in this case, a blog about Josephine Baker in English, Italian, and French, using also collections that are published via Europeana. So that's one example of how dissemination at the end can look like. And with this, I'm actually stopping here because the data dissemination reuse is the focus of the next event in June. So that's a kind of a teaser, so to say, to lead into that one. And I hope that gives you a bit of an idea of how we work. Of course, I'm available for any questions you will have. Looking in the chat, I don't see any right now, but I will be around for the rest of this morning. So also please let me know if there are any questions you have. And with this, I'm concluding my part and will, first of all, I give control of my screen back to Tamara, who's running the Zoom meeting. As always, I would say, we can't run this meeting without help from the office. That having said, we are also sitting here, the three of us in the Europeana office in the National Library of the Netherlands, running this meeting. And we go to the next slide. We are moving to the demonstration of the Meta Sandbox that Tomasz Solovets is giving to us. Tomasz works for one of our domain aggregators, Manuscriptorium, focusing on manuscripts, as it's probably not surprising. And he's based in Czechia and is running the technical infrastructure for Manuscriptorium. And he worked with the Meta Sandbox in the past, and he will tell you a bit more what his experience is. He's shared a video presentation with us, so he's not speaking live. And Tamara, please run the video.
Hello everyone, my name is Tomáš Psohlavec. I'm the technical coordinator of the Manuscriptorium service, and I would like to share with you our experience on the Meta Sandbox, which is a very useful tool we have integrated into our internal processes at Manuscriptorium. Before talking about Metis, I would like to introduce you very briefly to the Manuscriptorium service. It's a service that aims to aggregate the existing digital content from the era of old written and documentary heritage of European civilization, and we make the contents accessible in a single end-user interface. We focus namely the medieval and early modern manuscripts, incunabula, and early printed books, And what's quite important in this forum is that Manuscriptorium is a domain aggregator for Europeana. So this is the new Manuscriptorium website, but the more interesting part is here the digital library where you can perform various searches and browse the results, see the detailed descriptions of the records, the short ones, the long ones. You can have a look at the digital copies. There are documents with really extensive descriptions, like this Lipnická Bible, where the description is really very long and detailed. And of course, you can browse the digital copy. So basically, the content providers provides us with a very detailed and interesting content that we make available through Manuscriptorium. We can have a look at similar content in Europeana portal. So basically, this is very similar to what we have seen in Manuscriptorium. We can filter out the other aggregators, so can see the same content we've seen in Manuscriptorium can be accessed through Europeana like this. It looks simple, but it was quite a challenging task. And this was where the Metis sandbox really helped us to achieve these results. And it was really a very useful tool during the process. Mainly, we've been using the sandbox when initiating the aggregation of new partners repository. Manuscriptorium works in such a way that we aggregate the original content, so the content provider delivers the content in the original form using the native formats, etc. And so, because we want to make the content available in Europeana, we have to convert the original formats to the EDM. So we must prepare mappings between the two formats, the original and the EDM. And of course, when creating the mappings, we follow the EDM guides and the Europeana recommendations and ARMA project specification, which is a specification dedicated to medieval manuscript and so on. And there is lots of documentation available. But the Metis sandbox is a tool that performs automated checks and validation. So it helps us technicians to debug and fine-tune the mapping rules to detect errors and other issues, and it really helps a lot. But also the Metis sandbox provides the feedback on the original content quality. For instance, you can report some kind of missing fields, missing types of information. So in a little bit more detail, the initiation of aggregation looks like this. First of all, the content creators have to create some digitized document, to create image data, to create descriptive and technical metadata, and so on. And then they deliver the content to us at Manuscriptorium, where we create and apply the mappings. And now here comes the Metis sandbox. We upload the preliminary results through its interface, and then we receive the overall report. This is a brief demonstration. Here we go to the Metis sandbox, and we will start with creation of new testing dataset. So here I will supply some basic information on the dataset I will be sending to the sandbox. I can choose which way I will deliver the content. Usually in the early stage of validation, we work with some local files, and we can choose to upload these files in a single zip file. So I have some zip files with sample errors ready here just for the demonstration purpose. It's a zip file that contains the EDM records. I can submit it, and now I can see the sandbox is processing the dataset. It's a small one, and I can see there are some issues already reported, so I can have a look. These are some technical ones, so I haven't passed the basic validation, and also there are some warnings on accessing the media files, on accessing the images I was providing through the zip file. So with the feedback I obtained from the Metis, I can return to step 3 and update the mappings, or I can ask the content providers to update the data or metadata. And then with the updated content or with the updated mappings, I will produce a new dataset that I will upload again to the sandbox and will proceed towards less buggy results, which I will demonstrate now. I will start with a new dataset. And I will work with the OAP image provider of Manuscriptorium. So this would like simulate a later stage of the mapping development and validation of the EDM content to be delivered to Europeana. Let's go. We can see the processing is running. It's again a very small set for the demonstration purposes, but because you can upload many hundreds of records, if I'm correct, then you can use this reference number and you can use this number to return any dataset that is under processing in the background, which is a very nice feature. You can return to the processing of the dataset like that. So we can see this small one is already processed, and now we can see there are no issues in the processing. There are at least no errors or warnings. And so we can have a look at the content related feedback, which is very important. First of all, I can display statistics for the dataset. I have all the records listed in here. I get the information on the content tier, on the metadata tier, on the license, languages, and so on and so on. I can filter the better records and have a look what makes them better than the other records, because not only that I have some report on the dataset, but I can switch to records, and now I get detailed information on each of the records in the dataset, so I can see what's going on with this record, which is very nice. Can obtain various types of feedback on the languages and so on. And so based on this feedback, I can further go and improve the records. For instance, I can see the single one better record in this set. Uses contextual classes, the other ones do not. So this is possible improvement. So again, I can go back to the development of the mappings and some, say, keywords or other types of information. I could reference to some contextual resources. It's worth to mention that there is another type of dataset level feedback. It's called problem patterns, which I find useful as well. And it reports various irregularities or suspicious values in the dataset. So I can see some records with near identical titles, with very short descriptions, with extremely long values. This all draws my attention to the content of the record. So again, I can use this feedback to improve either the mapping or the original content itself. So again, with the feedback from the sandbox, I will return back to resolving the individual issues and improving the content, either the content or improving the mappings. And I repeat the process until finally satisfied with the validation results. And then, of course, we can proceed further. And the last type of feedback that can be provided through the sandbox is a preview on how the dataset will look like when finally in Europeana. And this allows to perform some visual checks or proofreading. So here you can see the same dataset in the preview. You can check the first book. So basically you can choose to browse the documents and see how it will be represented within Europeana. Obviously it's the same. Yeah, it's the same document I was presenting earlier. But not only you can check the data, you can see how it really will look like, including the description. So you can perform the proofreading. And see the record, the descriptive record. And that will be the last step of the work with the sandbox. Once we have passed through all these steps, we can proceed towards the production. So that's basically all, and this is how we've been using Metis Sandbox within Manuscriptorium, and this is how we will keep using it, because we really find the tool to be very, very useful, and not only for us technicians, but also for the content creators. And that's all from me now. I thank you both for the possibility to share our experience with Metis and for your attention.
Thank you, Tomasz, for that very clear presentation and demonstration of the Metis Sandbox. And if you feel inspired and encouraged to use it, Adina put the link to the sandbox also in the chat, which also links then to all our documentation we have available. And of course, if you have questions about this, I hope you know where you can find us. And we are happy to help through this. And with that, we are moving into our first panel session for today, where we want to look at how aggregators and also cultural institutions currently use and work with the tools and services that are provided by the foundation. And for this, I would like to introduce you to the three panelists. Let's start from left to right. I'm happy to have Killian Downing here on the panel, who is not working for an aggregator, but he's working as an archivist at the Dublin City University Library, which is publishing data in Europeana via the Digital Repository of Ireland, which is a national aggregator in Ireland. And as a counselor in the Europeana Network Association, he is investing also a lot into the support of young and new professionals, and he's also very active in the Network Association climate community. So welcome, Killian, on our virtual stage. And next is Andreas Sagic, who I mentioned earlier already, who is the head of the digitalization department at Milton Boyd Library in Belgrade. And he's also the co-chair of the Europeana Tech community and also the co-chair of the AAAF AV community. And he worked with the National Library in Belgrade as an aggregator to get the collections of his library ready for Europeana. And third in this panel is Kerstin Arnold, who we mentioned already before. He's the manager of the Archives Portal Europe Foundation and vice chair of the Europeana Aggregators Forum, and also then represents a lot of archives publishing on Europeana. So welcome the three of you. And I think with this, we could take down the slide. And yes, thanks, Tamara. Great to see you all. Welcome and good morning. I thought we'd actually pick up the discussion between us, coming back to where Harry left it earlier today, asking about why do you share data, and also I think Liana touched upon the value chain. So my first questions to you would be to get an idea from you. What are your main objectives when you publish data on the Europeana website? Next to possibly publishing those data also on your own website or other platforms. Maybe starting in the order that I have mentioned. Kilian, do you want to give us a short idea of what your objectives are?
Sure. Thanks, Henning. Just to check, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Great to be here and great to kind of be part of all this energy and analysis. Simply put, at DCU Library, we're wanting to just open up our collections. So first of all, I suppose our kind of designated community is our students and our staff, but it's also members of the public in Ireland and also internationally. And we are a small team, and our kind of directorate within the library has only been operating for a number of years. But nonetheless, we've kind of adopted a policy of kind of digitizing by default, where appropriate under our kind of collection development policy, and looking at opening up our collections as they are digitized and made available. And really, it's about kind of putting our collections out there and seeing how they're used. I always think an example is the best way to kind of to make sense of it. And a recent one was a collection which was a number of diaries by Sean Lester. And for example, there we have that discoverable on Europeana because it's aggregated through the Digital Repository of Ireland, which is Ireland's national aggregator. And at the moment, we have a number of secondary schools in. So this is kind of a transition year students, about 14, 15, and they're actively transcribing the diaries from this collection because through discoverability on Europeana, they have been given a platform on the Transcribathon platform. So simply put, by having a collection aggregated like that, it's opened up our kind of outreach capabilities. And it's got these students coming into Dublin City University, validating them, just coming into the university library, looking around and seeing, you know, oh, the students just look like me, and getting them involved in transcribing diaries that concern the outbreak of a lot of kind of xenophobic activity in Gdansk, in Poland, well, Danzig, as it was known just before the Second World War. So I'll probably chat about a bit more about that. But simply put, I think it's about opening up our collections and having a kind of a consistent and coherent approach within our university, but also with our national aggregator and of course Europeana, in terms of just getting the balance right of kind of meaningful access.
Oh, thanks, Kilian. So that means we can expect also more transcriptions coming our way from that. Sounds nice. how is it for you, Andrea? What was driving your library to connect with Europeana to publish your collections?
Well, first, good morning to all of you, and thank you, Henning, for showing our example of our work. Well, I following the Europeana for years, actually, and the idea and the objective was to share the cultural heritage digitized, but of course we need to build the infrastructure first, and then, but for me the main idea was to present the valuable collections we have, I think. I hope so, and that's it. I'm really happy that we finally succeeded last year.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. Yeah, me too. As I said, it was also a great experience for me. Kerstin, you are representing an aggregator. What do you know about the motivation of your partners in publishing with Europeana?
Yeah, thanks very much, Henning, for the introduction, and also from myself, good morning to everyone. So Archives Portal Europe, the aggregator that I'm representing, we don't have a direct agreement or general agreement with Europeana to deliver the data. So that is all kind of a decision that our content providers make them for themselves. And I know that they are essentially kind of making a rather conscious decision with regard to which parts of their collections they share. So they might be selecting specifically visually engaging material, or they might be selecting material that relates to a certain theme or topic that is currently in focus. So they're not sharing all of their collections in one big go, but making a selection there. And for them, I think they see Europeana specifically as a possibility to engage with new or other audiences that they wouldn't necessarily attract in the purely archival context.
Thanks, Kerstin. And we also curious, being one step further away from Europeana Foundation. Your partners, Kerstin, what's your experience? How they are influenced? How we are influencing their work? How our work is influencing also the requirements? What requirements they think they have to fulfill on top of everything else when they publish to Europeana, in comparison to, in your case, the Archives Portal Europe. Can you maybe elaborate on this a bit more?
Yeah, so maybe to take a step back and to explain a little bit how the aggregation works in our context. So Archives Portal Europe, being an archival aggregator, does not use EDM in its own system. So we are using the International Archival Standard Encoded Archival Description, EAD, and that comes with a different conceptual approach, so to say. So archival material is often represented in a hierarchical structure, in a collection style of things. And we know that Europeana, the focus is very much on the single objects, on the single items. So that is something that I think some of our partners needed to get used to, so to say. And we are essentially taking care with a general conversion, which was also mentioned by Thomas earlier, from EAD to EDM to make sure that we can take with us as much information as possible from the original data when we provide data to Europeana. I think just to kind of pick up on two things that we have had several conversations with our partners is sometimes they struggle with this thing about having a direct link to the media file, so to the JPEG or PNG or an image, for example, because that is often held in a different part of their systems. And when they export their metadata, that link is maybe not always automatically included, or it's not as easy as we would think to include that. So that's something sometimes a struggle for them. And then the other part, I would say, is maybe contextual classes, which are great for discovery, specifically in an international and multilingual context. But we have seen that there are different, let's say, describing traditions in the countries that we're working with. So some countries are great in having them already in their data, and for other countries, it's essentially kind of an extra consideration that they need to do when they start sharing in a bigger context and not just presenting the information on their own websites.
Interesting. That last point reminds me on what I've read about the work that Kilian described in a use case I've read recently. How the university library and the digital repository of Ireland work together on preparing data for Europeana. Would you say this to you, Kilian, sounds familiar? Was it really like also for you like an extra requirement in preparing your data to Europeana? And was there anything else that plays a role here?
I suppose it was just kind of enriching the data that we were creating, and I suppose for us it was critical to be aware that digitizing, we have to create kind of appropriate metadata at the same time, and really that's to kind of avoid bottlenecks that will come kind of after that. So we were using the Digital Repository of Ireland user manual, which has a kind of a comprehensive guide in terms of depositing and all the kind of considerations that you might have to consider in terms of metadata quality. So that started from simply evaluating your collection, preparing the data, looking at ingestion, and then staging is the term that they used in terms of kind of improving the data. And at the time of digitization, in that we hadn't added, for example, spatial metadata or temporal metadata. And we worked with Catherine Cassidy, who basically coordinated this work, but basically asking us to kind of take an approach to do the work. But we were kind of both learning about what is the best kind of metadata schema to be using, and to have, I suppose, kind of the most simplest approach that is able to kind of adequately meet the needs of kind of Europeana and discoverability. So that, for example, with the Sean Lester diaries, again, there's about 12 diaries. With the temporal data, they can be kind of staged on a timeline, so you can see how they intersect, but also the fact that the diaries have a huge amount of locations on them in terms of who Sean Lester was writing to and correspondence that he was receiving. And even in that self, having the spatial data. And I think we were looking at geonames, and there's still a bit of work to do. But I'd always say that this work is never perfect. It's just progress. And we very much view this as kind of an iterative workflow that we return to, when we have the staff and time, and kind of to always be consistent with our own policy, which is kind of collection development, collection management, first of all, and then in line with what the national aggregator need and with what Europeana needs, and getting the balance there in terms of how to kind of meaningfully approach it.
Yeah, that I think that good keyword, iterations, working iterations, is certainly a good way to also approach this, and getting step by step through that journey. How was it for you, Andrea? What has influenced your work the most when you thought about publishing on Europeana? Did it really mean changing anything on your side that you wasn't thinking about before?
Well, actually, yes. And I would like to thank to our national aggregator that are really helpful in improving our metadata, and specifically for implementing EDM standards and all the multilingual metadata content that it need to be added. And we really have hard work to get it a good marks on Sandbox, and of course that the quality get the quality of metadata to being published to Europeana. And I said we really hard work to do that. And also, I'm happy that IIIF now is supported that, and the content can be presented directly into the Europeana portal. But as we noticed when we started to say debugging some problems, we noted, for example, that when we started to do that, the IIIF presentation API version 3 wasn't supported. So it was a long time to discover what's happening. Everything is okay, the metadata is okay, the quality is okay, but what's happening, the content isn't visible. It's only we transforming to version 2, and okay, I tested, now version 3 work. And it's really influenced also that we are developing our digitization program for easy the process of enrichment of metadata, adding the EDM standards into the actual producing the additional metadata exclusively for Europeana.
Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, IIIF is really also worth mentioning. Digital Repository of Ireland is also a supporter of IIIF. So that's also worth mentioning. And maybe to note that we are also internally working on more guidelines and documentation to also help more of you to really benefit from IIIF. So follow that channel, so to say. We have more on this to come. Talking about tools and services, Andrea, is there? I mean, you both said how also happy you were with the support you got from your aggregator, which is very nice to hear also for us, because it shows that the connection and collaboration works. But was there anything specific that any tool or service you used that Europeana Foundation was providing to you and which didn't come from the aggregator? Anything that you remember you worked with, Andrea?
Can you? I try to. I didn't hear too good. What other tools that are not into the Europeana I used for?
What tools offered by Europeana Foundation you have used or you benefited from when preparing your data for publication?
Well,
things that we at the foundation have done other than coming from the aggregator that you worked with.
Well, I prepare this metadata manually. So these additions, so this is inspired us to improve our digitization workflow software with that. So, and okay. I must mention, when you mentioned IIIF, it was excellent example of cooperation between aggregator and the Cultural Heritage Institution, because in that moment the IIIF wasn't supported into the aggregator, and they really do a fantastic job. They very quickly implement the support for IIIF, that the metadata can be sent also with IIIF content officially.
Okay, so kudos to Tamara Butigan and her team at the National Library for making this happen. Kilian, is there anything that you remember you've worked with, tool services directly offered by Europeana Foundation in your process?
Oops, sorry there. Yeah, absolutely. So I've just sent a link there to the DRI manual, which goes through all the kind of preparation, staging, and kind of metadata enrichment. The publishing framework definitely, which is kind of a coming together of the 4 tiers, and then with the support of the Digital Repository of Ireland team, we were kind of advised where best and how best to add kind of more contextual information. But I suppose it's fair to say with us, we're kind of using Atom, an open source archive management tool, to kind of to catalog, and on that basis we can export metadata from that, and then we also have a kind of a library catalog. So there's kind of a coming together where I suppose it's very important to know exactly where we stand in terms of our collection description policy and metadata management policy. So I think when you have your digitization policy interacting with your collection management policy, whereby this process, and for us it's changed. Maybe a couple of years ago we would have taken a different approach in terms of metadata creation at the point of maybe capture, depending on the equipment that we're using, to who's responsible and how what's the word, how kind of quickly do we need additional metadata before we kind of publish our sorry, not publish, but aggregate a collection to our national aggregator. So I think that framework, the publishing framework, which outlines the minimum metadata requirements, that was a starting point for us on the basis of our kind of our size and what was appropriate to kind of our staffing and our capabilities. But we're definitely really interested in the Metis sandbox and using that in a way that we ourselves would have the kind of autonomy then to be kind of tweaking our collections. And let's say even with a Leicester collection, which was a very small collection, it was complicated because within the diary you'd have correspondence, and then you'd have more correspondence within that correspondence. So how do we make that kind of meaningful then when it's discoverable on Europeana, to show the complexities of how Leicester, let's say, was holistically keeping all of this documentation and making sense of that, you know, in a way that we can be transparent to users kind of looking to interrogate it.
Meta Sandbox, yes, good keyword. We heard about it before today. Probably, yeah, Kerstin is among the three of you the most experienced with the sandbox. Maybe you want to share from your perspective a quick view on how the Meta Sandbox helped you in preparing the data for your partners.
Yeah, sure. Maybe before I do that, because Killian mentioned the manual provided by DRI colleagues, might also be worth mentioning the Europeana knowledge base, which essentially is the central hub where you can find all the documentation around EDM and around the aggregation process. So that might also be worth a look at. In terms of the Meta Sandbox, I think there are 3 aspects that I really found it helpful for our process. And that kind of leads into different stages of our data processing workflow. So the first and kind of most simple thing is that it allows you to make sure that your EDM data is technically correct so that it validates. And that is kind of our internal checkpoint, because if our EDM output wouldn't validate, that would mean that we need to adapt something on our central conversion script. Then there's data quality checks. So you essentially, with the sandbox, as shown earlier in the demonstration, get back some reports in terms of where the metadata quality lies, but also where the content quality lies. So you can see where there are possibilities or where there are areas to maybe still improve. And then the third one is probably the one that we use most in our conversation with our content providers, is the possibility to preview the data, how it would look like on the Europeana website. Because as I mentioned earlier, some of our content providers need to get used to the conceptually different approach of presenting things, and therefore the preview is really helpful.
Yeah, leading to a point Killian was touching upon, but maybe also again, Kerstin, as you know about this already a bit more. I mean, right now we know that the meta sandbox is most suitable for EDM, but we already have an option in the sandbox to transform non-EDM data to test them there. And we are currently also working on an API that will allow others to connect with the sandbox and basically allow aggregators, for example, to implement this in their own infrastructure, and to allow institutions to more directly be involved in testing the data, previewing the data. How do you think this will change your work, Kerstin, and how that will change the work of the partners you work with?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that in our context, it's the decision of our content providers who, when they share data with Europeana, and that decision is not just something that they tell us and then we act upon it, but essentially in our context, our content providers have the possibility to do all the data processing themselves, and that currently does not include the processing with the Meta sandbox, because it's kind of a separate system. So having the possibility to integrate the sandbox in our own workflows will essentially give that control back to our content providers. So they will be able to process the data once they have converted it to EDM in the sandbox, to check the quality of the data, to see the preview. And when they are fine with everything, they can then ideally initiate the putting their data on our OAI PMH repository, so that Europeana could automatically harvest that. And I think that's also one thing that we want to look into, which we haven't done so far, would be to see if we can also use that to implement incremental harvesting, so that we don't have to always harvest the whole data set, but only harvest those things that actually have been updated or added since the last harvest has happened.
Yes, from Kilian, I mean, he mentioned this already, that being interested in the using the sandbox itself. Is there anything you would like to add? You would rather like to use it directly on your side, or would it be better, like, really, if also your aggregator is offering this option for you to preview your data on their side? What would work? What do you think would work best for you?
I think just cooperation there, that maybe the national aggregator should look to do training, you know, for multiple kind of cultural heritage institutions, and whether that's kind of on site or online. I think that would be helpful as a starting point. And I suppose, you know, with the coordination of the aggregators forum, there could be a way that we could provide consistency that I think is needed across the board. But I think it's also important to give autonomy, let's say, to the organization, so that they can kind of choose, I suppose, where they're at on the journey in terms of, you know, obviously the minimum quality is critical, but I think it should be a kind of a two-way, a kind of a top-down and a bottom-up, in terms of kind of both using it in different ways, so that there's basically a coherence then in the approach of publishing and sharing kind of digital cultural heritage.
That's very nicely said. Yeah, I think training is very high on our agenda, and I think also enabling you to do your work better is a key part of what we at the foundation, but also the aggregators, are interested in enabling. Andrea, would you like to use also the sandbox yourself, or rather through the National Library? What would work best for you in really preparing maybe more data from your library for online publication?
Well, actually, I use it this weekend while testing our development of program. But it would be really nice if we have this service through our national aggregator, not to use the Europeana infrastructure, but also to get feedback, support from our national aggregator, because okay, for someone who tested and who worked with that is okay, but someone who first try to testing without any background, he will be very confused what this is about, what this is about. So okay, training could be also a good part for cooperation with our national aggregator to train the other cultural heritage institutions in Serbia, to help them to prepare their content and their metadata for publications through Europeana. So that would be, as Kilian said, a good cooperation with the national aggregator and good support from them. And of course, at the end, and for you, from you to get it as much better we can.
Nice. So collaboration is key, as we hear. That's yeah, very much also in our interest, and I hope this will work. And I'm hearing already a few things that also we could improve in how we work. And maybe let's conclude this panel with thinking about yeah, Christmas around the corner. You have one wish free for a new tool or a new feature or an improvement of an existing tool or a service that is maybe missing. Is there anything that comes to mind where you say, if Europeana Foundation or the initiative would invest in this, this would be really key to help me with my work? Andrea, maybe you want to share your wish with us.
Yes, actually, this is an old wish to implement IIIF Search API into the portal, which is possible. There, everything is there. And I tested one video content this weekend and noticed that there are no support for the subtitles, which is also available into the Mirador and into IIIF presentation API. All informations are there. Just implement it. That's two wishes. I think is not too much.
That's fine. We can live with two wishes. IIIF is certainly also something we keep working on. Kilian, anything you wish you would like to us to work on?
Well, just I completely agree with that. And if there was kind of a thinking around, you know, where these IIIF servers could be managed, and if there was again a coming together in kind of maybe country groups or something like that, that might be an interesting way that we could kind of share perhaps the hardware that we need and make it kind of I suppose more manageable then for institutions that might not have funding to be able to kind of have IIIF servers on premise. But I'd love to see, and I think this is something that has been said here before, but if there was a coming together around digital preservation of data aggregated to Europeana either through the national aggregators or through Europeana itself, whereby there could be something just similar like the publishing framework, that there would be a kind of a digital preservation framework, and this could be looking at like an identifier or kind of some sort of status representing the collection's safeguarding or protection over time. And the idea there is it could be modeled on something like the Digital Preservation Coalition's DPC, so it's DPC RAM, a rapid maturity assessment modeling tool, where it kind of assesses organizations' capability. And for example, like DCU Library would be about maybe level 2, which would be basic, that we're aware of our needs. But that would be really helpful for us.
Sounds like a big wish, but we it's now recorded, so we will see what we can do with that. Kerstin, do you also have a wish from Santa Claus?
Yes, I'm going to add a +1 to both the wishes from Andrea and Kilian. I think my wish is going back to one thing that I mentioned earlier as a struggle to our content providers around kind of declaring contextual entities, so persons, places, subjects, because I know that for most of them, that information already is in the metadata, but in a majority of cases, at least in our context, they are not tagged specifically, so it's not as easy to actually make use of them as we would want to. So maybe some more services or tools to, specifically in a multilingual context, be able to identify those entities and connect them with URIs of linked open data vocabularies would be nice.
Yeah, I don't know if Antoine is here, but I think there might be work going on already on this. Maybe worth saying also the enrichment topic mentioned before is something that also is important for us. So we also started working on a better documentation on our processes. So it's another thing we will work on. And with this, I think we haven't reached Christmas yet, but at the end of that first panel that we have set up, and I would like to thank Andrea, Kilian, and Kerstin for being here today with us, sharing their thoughts and wishes, and I'm sure we can come back to some of those things in the near future, and I'm happy to collaborate with you either directly or via your aggregators on keeping that journey going. Thank you very much, all of you. And we are going to have another demonstration, and this is about the user statistics dashboard. For people that are around for quite a while, you will remember there was something a couple of years ago, and now we are getting something back. And this is also work where my colleague Fiona worked on a lot. I'm looking to my left here now because she's sitting right left to me. But you will see a demonstration that is recorded. It's probably safer to record a demo than similar as what Thomas has done, than to do it live and then things go maybe wrong. But if you have questions about this directly, about specific things, Fiona is also logging into the Zoom meeting, so she could answer questions also right away. And with that, Tamara, can you please move to the next slide and then start the video, please? Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Fiona Mowat. I work at Europeana Foundation in market research and marketing analytics. What I'd like to do today is introduce you to a new product that we've been developing. It's a dashboard for user traffic statistics on Europeana. So this is for organizations who've already shared content with Europeana, and that content's available on europeana.eu. If you are working for such an organization, then you can request one of these dashboards and you can actually see how many times people have been looking at your content on Europeana and what they've been doing. So let me introduce you to all the parts of this dashboard. There are 4 main metrics that we have. We have the number of visits in the top left. So this shows for this period, and I have set this to the month to date. So this is up to November 22nd. We can see that this provider has had 1,723 visits to their content. And you can look at this on the graph by day. So you can see, for example, on Sunday, November 12th, there were 81 visits. Now, these visits, they're not what we would call unique visits. They are all visits. So they're not unique in the sense that some of these visits could be the same person coming back multiple times during this period. But sometimes it's hard for us to track unique visits anyway, because if people don't accept the cookies and so on, then under GDPR, we don't track them. So therefore, we thought it was best to just give an overall number of visits here. We also have another graph that you can view by day, and that's page views. So this shows that in this period, this provider their content had 1,905 page views. So you can look through and say, for example, okay, on Tuesday, November 7th, they had 114 pages viewed. So perhaps if you're running a campaign or something, or you're telling people that your data's on Europeana, you can then use this dashboard to see if on those days there's a spike in number of visitors. The average time on your provider's content, in this case it's 22 seconds. So that shows the average time that someone's spending on Europeana EU just looking at your organization's content. Likewise, bounce rate here, this shows how quickly someone has come to Europeana, viewed one page of your content, and then left. So in this case, it's less than 1%, is 0.52%. This is likely because people were finding this organization's content through other pages, and then or they were finding the content directly and then they went on to look at other pages on Europeana EU straight after, so they didn't leave. So this dashboard, we've made it as a looped data board. So what that means is at the bottom here, you can click to right in the middle in the little dots or with these arrows. And you can look at another dashboard. So this one is usage statistics for the whole of Europeana.eu. So here we have the number of visitors in this period. So this is also the month to date. So you can see how many visitors we had this month. Again, how many page views we had, what the average time is, and the bounce rate. So you can use these 4 metrics to compare to the metrics from your own organization. I would say that the statistics here for the whole website, for Europeana.eu, they also include contextualized content like blogs and exhibitions and so on. So they are likely to be higher than just the object pages coming from your organization. So that's something to bear in mind. But I think it's a good comparison. And also it's really interesting to look at what sorts of visitors we have at Europeana.eu and what sorts of things people are doing in general on our website. So what we put here, for example, is downloads. You can see in the month to date, we had 22,000 downloads. So that's where a user's come into an item page and they've clicked to download that image or text or whatever it is. Likewise, click through to provider website. You can see we had 15,000 click-throughs in this month. So that means that people come to an item page and they say, it says, look at this item on the provider's webpage, and they click there. And then that takes them to potentially your webpage, your organization's webpage. So this also shows how we can generate traffic for our data providers, for cultural heritage institutions who have shared their data with us. You can also get an insight into which channels people are using to come into Europeana. So if that's search engines, we find that the vast majority of traffic is coming from search engines such as Google. Direct entry, we have websites, campaigns, and then social media. You can also see which countries people are coming from. So here we have in this month to date, Spain we had the most visitors coming from Spain, followed by Germany, followed by United States. And we do get a lot of international visitors, so outside of Europe. So we are able to open up your content to a wider international audience. If we look through the list, we can see these are mostly European countries, but then another significant country in this list for this month was Mexico. So we have quite a few views from there as well. So this is the dashboard, and yeah, say we wanted to look at views for the year to date. Let's do this year. Then we can just change that in the widget. So you can change the date per widget, or you can do that for the whole board. So if we change it for this widget, we can see that for the year to date, actually visitors from Germany were the most prolific. The United States still up there. Netherlands in the middle, over 1 million visitors from the Netherlands this year. And then Denmark, Belgium and Finland are the other ones coming up the bottom of the list. So it is always changing, depending, of course, on in which countries are trending. So if you want to change the date range for this entire board, then you could change it here. So you could say this quarter, for example. So I can change the whole board to show us the data for this quarter. And you can do the same for the board from your institution as well. So we can see that. So the quarter is also including December. So that's why it's showing a downward trajectory today, because of course we don't have visitors in the future. We don't have that future data, of course. But anyway, we can have a look and see. You can see how you can play around with this and how you can learn more about visitors to Europeana, and also how your own institution's content is being interacted with on Europeana. So this is the dashboard. We also have a help guide, which is on our knowledge base. So you can use this help guide to learn more about the dashboard. It explains everything that I've just very, very briefly gone over today. So how the number of visits are calculated, the average time, bounce rate, and so on. It explains everything in more detail, and it also tells you where you can sign up. So if you are working for an institution that shares data with us already, then you can go to our website. Here it is. And up here on the top, it says share your data. You click there, and then you can click to sign up. So this explains, do you already share your institution's data with Europeana? Would you like to know how many people are viewing your data on Europeana EU? Sign up here to receive your user statistics dashboard. So you sign up, you fill this form, and then we will get in touch with you with your dashboard, and we'll explain to you how long it's going to take to receive that. They are made to order. So basically, we will let you know how long that will take. It doesn't take long to make each one, but of course, if it's a time that's busier, we have a lot of requests, then that might take a little longer, but we will let you know exactly how long when you sign up here. And yeah, I think that's everything. So I really look forward to receiving some requests from some people here today, and making those data boards for you. And I hope that you enjoy using them. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona, for that demo. And yeah, thanks, Lina, for sharing the links. One thing I would like to quickly emphasize is really like this is a I don't know how many institutions or people representing institutions that have published data on Europeana or already are in the audience today. You're welcome to sign up. For the aggregators, please, as we discussed before, please wait promoting that link to your partners. We will work with you directly in how we roll this out. Also for the reason Fiona mentioned, those dashboards are built one by one. So if we are getting 1,000 requests tomorrow, then we will do nothing else than building dashboards. But yes, for curious to see really from the institutions that are joining us today, if you are interested in receiving your dashboard, we are happy to create this, and we come back to all of the aggregators with the interest to also do this with you. So please, for the aggregators, you can contact me directly, and we can take it from there. And with this, I see Tom already on the screen. Tom, please take it from here.
Thanks very much, Henning, and thanks to Fiona for that interesting presentation about the statistics. So we're on the second panel discussion about how aggregators envisage operating in this new data space that we're thinking about, and we're still we're still thinking about what it's going to be like, and what it's going to what it's going to entail. So I'm very pleased to welcome my three guests on the next slide. And they are Dimitra Atsidis from the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision, Valentina Bacci from the Photo Consortium, and Pavel Katz from the Jewish Heritage Network. And we've all four of us have kind of worked together over the years on various projects. So it's very nice to have you here. And we are going to have a few questions and just to sort of tease out what aggregators are thinking about with this new data space. So I'm going to start off in alphabetical order to start off with. So Dimitra, I'll start with you. How, in your opinion, will publishing data in the data space be different from the publication workflows we have now?
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Dimitra. I'm representing DC4EU, the Dutch collections for Europe, which is the Dutch aggregator for Europeana.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. At Sound and Vision, we actually represent two aggregators, so it's good to mention that I'm here from the Dutch aggregators perspective. So first I see a distinction actually between Europeana as a platform and the data space. The data space for cultural heritage could cater to more diverse heritage data sets for multiple use cases and services. While I see the Europeana platform more as the showcase to highlight the high quality digitized heritage objects that are published to the data space. While publishing data on the Europeana platform is currently quite centralized, and the amount of data is growing. It also follows strict protocols, which, for example, XML data modeled as EDM. So, in my opinion, publishing in the data space should gradually move or open to other forms of publication proven protocols, as well as moving away from a completely centralized infrastructure and finding more ways to operate in a decentralized way. So going back to the Dutch aggregator and the Netherlands. So in the Netherlands, we have a Dutch digital heritage strategy in place, which is based on linked data principles, actually, and publishing linked open data at the source. And there's at the moment a really big push to use at the source things like persistent identifiers, linked open data vocabularies, to publish data sets and make them known in the dataset registry, use IIIF, and publish linked data, and but all at the source. So maximizing the usability of data at the source is central in this Dutch heritage strategy. And will be changing the more traditional organization of data flows in the country, with more the regional and other intermediate aggregators and their roles in this data ecosystem. And I can imagine all the way to the data space. So we started to build in the Netherlands a workflow with services based on these linked data principles. That refer to data at the source instead of copying it. So as DC4EU, as the aggregator, we want to work as much as possible with this workflow when publishing data to the data space, and also in this way contribute to making the flow of data more decentralized. But it would also mean that the role of my aggregator will be incredibly changing from what is now mostly a technical aggregator to more of an organizational bridge and knowledge base between Dutch Heritage Institution and Europeana.
Thank you very much for that. It was interesting how you see the sort of different, the role changing and more sort of organizational, or more an organization of workflows. And so I wondered what Valentina had to say about that.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, maybe for the benefit of audience who may not know this already, Photo Consortium is an aggregator that is supported by the Mint mapping tool. The Mint mapping tool is one of the core elements started since the beginning of Europeana that enables to transform the metadata schema of the content providers into the Europeana data model, and thus enable Europeana to harvest those data and show in the website, as we saw from previous presentations. So we are using this tool since many years now. And yeah, the workflow is well established. What I see that could happen in the new environment and in the new approach of the data space is indeed more flexibility in the publication workflows. So in my point of view of a Mint-based aggregator, I'm open to flexible publication models where the Mint mapping tool is certainly used for mapping the metadata from the content provider schema to EDM, because that is very well established. It has a lot of functionalities, ways to enrich the data. So it is really a valuable tool, but maybe we can consider that the publication and the aggregation by Europeana can happen via other platforms and services. And in this light, I would like to mention that there are various projects ongoing. One of these is Eureka 3D. We are the coordinators, proudly. And we are exactly trying to develop a data hub that is using the functionalities of Mint to map the metadata schema to EDM, but maybe the aggregation by Europeana of this EDM converted data set can happen not only via the Mint OAI server, but also via other platforms and other services. So we are working in this direction that enables, more flexible publication models for cultural heritage institutions.
All right, thank you very much. Pavel, how do you think publishing data in the data space will be different?
Yeah, I would definitely connect to what my colleagues said, especially Dimitri, but I would suggest upping the game significantly. I think the whole way we are speaking about data space, the language we are using, the metaphors we are using, still reminds me too much of the current way of aggregating data, which by all, I think, opinions is not serving us anymore adequately and sufficiently. We are still talking about this explicit activity of publication, something that we need to apply to our data. We need to take it somewhere. We need to prepare it in some way. So this is very much the old way of thinking, but we're trying to fit it into the new model. And I think that's the wrong way to go. I think we should use the opportunity offered to us by visionary thinking of the European Commission to completely change the language, the rhetorics. I think we are, it's a data space. A data space is something which is around us. We are surrounded by space. We live in space. We live in the space which is filled with data. I mean, can you see the space around us? I definitely can see it. I mean, there are museums, there are people, there are entities, there are cars. These are all data. So rather than thinking about taking this data and somewhere and investing resources and the technology to do that, I'd rather think the other way around. I'd suggest to think how we open our eyes and how we create the tools, open our eyes, see this space, and create the necessary tools which actually connect meaningfully and sustainably the elements of this space. And it's our role, I think, to, after we open our eyes, after we get the first idea of how these tools should be changed, it's our role to evangelize and to promote this thinking in the sector. And this, so I think if we do that, I think the concept of publishing the data spaces will change profoundly. We will stop thinking about publishing this explicit activity. We will think about caring for our data, improving our data at source, definitely, as Dimitri said. I think that's the crucial keyword here. And relying on the mechanisms which emerge around us for consuming this data to various uses, to various platforms, in a very equal way. So there should be no privilege to one platform or another. Europeana should be consuming it on a par with all the others. Europeana should lead the way to how others can consume it, but not become this, I think, intermediary. So I think when we understand this, then the way we are thinking about publishing will completely change. We'll stop thinking about publishing. We'll start thinking about how to make our data the best way it can be, relying on the surroundings of the data space to consume it and to take it where it fits and is needed the best.
Now, I had a little thought while listening to the first panel about how much previewing we do. We're sort of thinking, oh, how's it going to look? What's it going to look like? We've got this website with its house style, but we need to do a little bit of tweaking about to make it look nice on another website. And how do you see that? Do you see that happening, or will it need that kind of human interaction, or will it just sort of happen automatically?
Not only I don't think we should think how our data looks on other websites. I don't think we can even predict where it will look in this or other way. We cannot know. We shouldn't be guessing what is the use, and we shouldn't be direct. I mean, we should be making sure that our data is there at source at the best way possible, with all the necessary rights statements, with all the necessary controls. This open thinking does not mean that it's a Wild West and everyone can do with it what they want. On the opposite, but these controls and the mechanisms to direct the usage and to control it stay with the data. And once the data is there in the best quality and with all the necessary information about its possible and impossible usage, then we should let it go, and we should rely on the market or the universe, market in the public sense of this word, to take it and to present it. And we can't know what is the best presentation to that audience or another audience. The different platforms, the different apps will decide about that, not us.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Right. Brings me to the second question, which I'd like Valentina to start off with, please. So, what kind of publication services and tools are you currently working on that could be of benefit for publishing in the data space? And what kind of publication services would you like to see made available, or you think will be essential?
Yes, I think here we have to consider that we are in a moment of change for the cultural heritage sector. I mean, the digital transformation is a process that started since many years now, but we are in a moment of real change, especially because we felt the need in the European Union, and recommendations stemmed from this, to improve and to sort of push the boundaries of digitization towards the virtual world and the 3D digitization. So we possibly all know that there is this recommendation from the European Commission that invites cultural heritage institutions to really, approach this new area of 3D digitization. Some of them are more advanced and more ready. Others are, a bit behind and needs to be included in this new path. But certainly 3D digitization is a totally brand new area for many of cultural heritage institutions. And I think what we really need to do in this moment is to try and understand what are the needs and requirements of cultural heritage institutions to embrace this transformation and make the most out of their digitization efforts in 3D. In particular, I think that there is an important point on how these 3D objects are really made available and visualized by users. Because indeed, the 3D objects, 3D models come with different formats that are based on the capture technologies, the equipment used, and various types of providers' requirement. And not all the formats can be viewed with the same tools. Not all the tools are compatible with all the formats. we have format converters, but the result in terms of quality may be not optimal, because these 3D models can be really gigantic files, and to compress them in order to make them available on the web may cause data loss. So we need to really find tools and services, standards and guidelines in order to understand how to better present and enable reuse for these new 3D digitization. So I think this is a whole new area to explore for most cultural heritage institutions, and that is also something that we are sort of exploring all together, as it happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago when we started 2D digitization.
Thank you. And Pavel, what existing tools are you using now which will benefit?
So we are thinking about the tools that will benefit us in the future. We are promoting this idea of a data space within, so as the next stage of evolution of the Judaica content network. We call it Jewish data space, unimaginatively. Basically, the idea is to anticipate the developments on the European data space scene of different kind of data spaces, not only cultural heritage, also tourism, the ECCH development, and to prepare ourselves, our network, to this new phase. And to do this, we very much adopted the thinking of a decentralized, solid-based ecosystem. Well, Solid would not come as a surprise to this group. We've been doing Solid with my dear colleagues Marie Veronique and Kerstin. We've been leading this task force. We're very much inspired by this. It's not technology, it's a way of thinking, really. So we are very much inspired by this thinking. The idea is to offer to data partners, to museums and archives, a data vault. It's called POD in the Solid language, personal online data store, but it's really not the name that counts. It's like a data vault, a data sharing device, you can call it, which shares their collections through linked data protocol with different uses. First of all, of course, we piloted with the Judaica aggregator, Judaica platform. So the aggregator as an idea will basically evolve into a platform, just one platform which consumes their data, but we are the one to pilot that. And then the services also evolve, because the services basically disconnect from the from being internal flows of the aggregator. They evolve to being independent standalone services, which can be used by the data stores of our network members, but they can also be used by anyone else. So we're piloting this thinking in a range of projects and pilots and ideas. One very interesting use case that I would like to mention is is a transition. So when a partner is in a transition, we have one partner which approached us very recently and said that they want to transition from one collection management system to another. And this is the perfect moment to capture this opportunity, because instead of transitioning to another collection management system that will one day, sooner or later, will require another transition in the future, we are offering to this partner a transition to a standalone pod service, and then connecting a collection management system to this service, so that in the future the transition will be made much easier, if not almost seamless. So this is what we are doing.
Yes, it's a very interesting way of thinking in a new environment. And Dimitra, what tools are you using which would benefit, which would be of benefit?
And then I'm going back to the Netherlands again, and to the National Strategy for Digital Heritage, where several services for linked data principles and publishing at the source are being developed at the moment. And as DC4U, as a national aggregator, we want to take advantage as much as possible of the digital transformation, digital transformation that is currently taking place in the Netherlands, where more and more CHIs are making the shift and we work with linked data principles with the help of, for instance, their collection management vendors and a whole network of heritage coaches in every province. But I think that there are two services and tools that are being developed that can publish that can really benefit the data space for us in the Netherlands, but hopefully it also inspires other aggregators and national strategies as well. The first is called LODA, the Linked Open Data Aggregator, and together with the Dutch Digital Heritage Network and also with Europeana in the data space project, we're developing this. LODA will take linked data, currently schema.org, but we also envision other linked data forms like linked art or RDA or whatever, and it semi-automatically transforms linked data to EDM. At the moment, it transforms the data into the XML format that the Europeana platform accepts. But in the end, we want also to publish RDF in the data space, or even better, next to EDM, also publish other linked data formats or other formats as different distributions of the same data set. And another related service is the dataset register. That is really developed as a service in the Netherlands. This CHIs are making known all their cultural and heritage datasets. It's a register of descriptions of datasets pointing to the location where the dataset can be retrieved and in what way. And that is at the source and as linked data as much as possible, but this is of course a very gradual process that will take quite some time. But it consists of a very broad range of data sets at the moment already, and it's growing. Data sets that conform to the framework of Europeana frameworks, but also data sets of, for instance, persons, events, terms, stories, without digitized objects, for research sets, etc. It's quite a big it encompasses a lot. So seeing that this dataset register actually consists of already of a very broad range of heritage in the Netherlands, I also envision that the data space can interact with this registry at some point, and maybe with other registries that are at other countries or places. But it's something we will actually investigate this year when working on the LODA services, if that is a viable solution also for the data space.
It's interesting that when you start linking data, then you're not just linking objects to objects, you're linking objects to articles and research and all sorts of other content, not just CHI content. So it starts to really sort of have even more of a spin to it. So I'm going to go on to the third question. We're kind of halfway through the discussion, but we're kind of on time. So in the third one is how, in your opinion, will the publication landscape look like in the data space, and who will be the actors publishing in the data space? And I will ask Pavel to start this one, please.
Thank you. Well, I think if we adopt this more innovative way of thinking, then we will discover that there are actually a lot of new participants in the data space that are happy to participate. Of course, I'm talking about much smaller and less institutionalized owners, small collections, community collections, even personal collections, small CHIs, volunteering-based CHIs, all those much smaller players, for whom the barrier of participating in today's initiatives like Europeana is too high for many reasons. So in this sense, I think the landscape will become significantly more inclusive, fundamentally more inclusive, because it will be inclusive by design. If any piece of data that we can see in this space is essentially part of the data space, then we only need to find this tool, this connection, and really see it. I think that once this landscape becomes much more inclusive and much more diverse, then we will also see a lot of new interesting ways of working with between the participants of the data space. New forms of collaboration, new form of interaction will emerge. Because in fact, and that's really something which I thought about in preparation to this panel, we as a community, we got used to this conversation about us and the field. It's the relationship between the CHIs and us aggregators, Europeanas, that we are interested in, we are building them. Well, in fact, this is not interesting. What is interesting is the connections between them. They hold our heritage, and this heritage is interconnected, interestingly. This heritage is complementary, overlapping, sometimes even contesting each other. So these are I think the interesting connections that we should bring to surface, enable, and this, I think, this is where the real impact of our initiative lies, because we will enable this very new, unpredicted network of connections, collaborations between all the members of the society and heritage sector. So I think it will be super exciting to watch.
Thank you. And Dimitra, how do you see this landscape emerging? What's going to be happening in it?
I think, yeah, Pavel's answer is very interesting in that respect. I think I agree with most of it. I think that that the actors publishing in the data space remain for a large part the CHIs, the trustworthy data sources. They have the data, at the source, but it needs to be more inclusive, from the very small volunteer-run CSIs to the larger institutions. But yeah, I can also imagine that you want to identify published data that was reused or annotated by other stakeholders or services. So yeah, also open up the data space there to other actors, but also open up to data set not necessarily conforming to the current frameworks. So really make it the data space for cultural heritage, one for all heritage in the broadest sense possible, with from the small to the largest.
And actually, before I go on to Valentina, there's a question for Dimitra from Frank von Hagel. Does this also mean that data providers could deliver directly via the LOD aggregator and dispense with the data exchange agreement if their data is marked as linked and open data?
Not yet, but because we're currently, of course, working with publishing on the Europeana platform, I would say. So we still need the data exchange agreement, but that's a conversation. I'm actually thinking already about it as well. Like, what would we still need it if it's already declared in the dataset register that there's a clear right statement for the metadata already, and if you pick up the dataset, you also have the right statement for the digital objects. But the dataset registry would already say what is the copyright for the metadata. So would you need a DEA? That's an interesting discussion. But for the moment, I would to be sure, I still let people sign the DEA.
Right, thank you. And Valentina, back to the publication landscape. What do you think?
Yes, I'm on the lines of colleagues that certainly the hope and the aim of the data space for cultural heritage is to support a more inclusive representation of the cultural heritage sector. We know that the data space has as its foundation and building blocks the Europeana environment. And in Europeana, we know that we have nearly 4,000 cultural heritage institutions participating. Some of them are really veterans, and they will be represented in the data space. But we also want others to share their data. One thing that is coming to my mind while we discuss it is that we normally think about users of our data and stakeholders as humans. But we should not forget that also machines seek for data in order to reuse it. And this I mean, this topic is interesting. We haven't explored it yet very much. But for example, there is a discussion ongoing in the Europeana tech community about the data sets that we publish as open access being sourced and reused by artificial intelligence to generate new data. And here there are, I mean, various challenges to consider. First of all, the authenticity of the results and of the materials that is machine produced, i.e. based materials. For example, there are content providers who may not like that their data are used by machines or by artificial intelligence to produce creative products. So this is, I mean, an area that we start considering right now, because before it didn't exist, and it poses challenges. And while I think that, there are still risks in the creative part of AI, in AI-generated imagery, for example, I think that for cultural heritage, institutions are, the guardians of this heritage. So there are risks connected to the reuse and, let's say, manipulation of cultural heritage data by artificial intelligence that we need to take into account. So yes, this is not really linked to the publication landscape, to the core of the question, but I think it is a topic that we will need to start reflecting about.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so this is the last question. In the last 5 minutes, so with the overall concept of data spaces as initiated by the European Commission, in which areas would you consider publication of cultural heritage data useful? So, what are the other data spaces? Where's it going to be useful, and how would it work? So I think I'll go to Dimitra to start this one off.
Yeah, for this one, I switched hats a little bit because I'm employed at Sound Innovation in the Netherlands, which obviously as an AV archive has a lot of media data, and we're also part of the media data space, TEMS, which just kicked off a while ago. So there's a direct relation, I think, also for us working in two data spaces, at least between the media and the cultural heritage data space. And there's the hope that the media data space leads to better standards and interoperability for media data, which is a challenge in itself because it's such a huge amount of data and huge copyright challenges. But hopefully it can enrich somehow the audiovisual offer at the moment in the cultural heritage data space. But I think there might be many unexpected connections of cultural heritage with other data spaces that we just cannot imagine at this point. It would really be interesting to see how reusers or users of the data space would actually what they would actually come up with.
Right, and Valentina.
Yes, and I think another one of the usual suspects for connections with cultural heritage is certainly tourism, because indeed cultural material is golden materials also for tourism promotion. And I mean, the data space for cultural heritage can serve to promote the collection, the histories, but also the locations where this heritage is preserved. So certainly cultural material can support cultural tourism promotion. However, and this was also mentioned right now by Dimitra, we still have this challenge on copyright and license, especially for cultural materials, audiovisual, for example, that is produced recently or belongs to the 20th century. So maybe there are materials that cannot be reused or would not be openly accessible for reuse in the area of cultural tourism or tourism promotion. And I was thinking that perhaps we could consider this an opportunity for reflecting again on rights labels. And in fact, we have this, it is supported by Europeana, this rights statement that is in copyright, but educational reuse permitted. So this means that the object is in copyright, but if you want to create educational materials with that, you can use it. And maybe we can consider that something similar could be developed also for reuse in cultural tourism promotion.
Thank you very much. And Pavel, you have 1 minute for the last
yeah, I certainly agree with
thoughts.
my colleagues. I think heritage is so interesting because it is at the junction, interconnection of so many societal realms, tourism, media, research, education, urban design, social connections. That's why it's so interesting to be here. So I don't think we can predict what will be the most interesting reuse avenue. And that's why, but I also think that that's why, as much as it's important to think about interconnection of data spaces, as the European Commission requires very wisely, we should also think outside the context, outside the confines of these projects, because, for example, education in the Jewish heritage is very, very important consumer, and there is no data space for education. So I think we should think about these data spaces as pilots of domains and not as something which prescribes us exactly how this will be used.
Right. Thank you very much. And I want to say thank you very much to all three panel members and for giving such thoughtful answers to these questions about the data space. It's been really fascinating and definitely food for thought. So I will now hand back to Marie for conclusions.
Thank you very much, Tom, for moderating this very interesting panel, and thank you very much to the speakers of this panel, and also to the previous one and the presenters. So it's kind of amazing, the miracle of the end of the year. We are perfectly on time, no delay, which means that actually, as we didn't let that much the opportunity to do so, except for the chat, if there is any reaction or question, please do not hesitate to put them in the chat or even raise your hand while I will make my conclusion for this event. So we started with the whole big picture, the big strategic vision for this data space and why it is important to publish cultural heritage data on Europeana and in the upcoming data space for cultural heritage. We have seen also the challenges from the CHI's perspective, the cultural heritage institution, who have their own specificities, their own views and approach on how they describe their cultural heritage data, and how this could end up in a kind of harmonized and cross-domain portal like Europeana and tomorrow in the data space for cultural heritage. We also have seen in the previous panel also that there is also this question on the frameworks that you are using and the approaches that may vary according that if it's for publishing or if it's for preservation. We have well noted the requirement and the wishes for Christmas that were mentioned during that panel. So you can see that something is moving. So there is some changes ahead. And the reflection that also we raised from the second panel, like what the data space is actually allows us to expect in the coming years, is that we changed the perspective, and also I think one element that was mentioned is that is very interesting is that we are not publishing and like expecting or even predicting the uses that will be done from the data that we are publishing, and that's something that is very promising and encouraging. And so this was about data publication, but actually it's difficult to kind of really cut the wire between the publication and the actual reuse. So already in the second panel, we started touching upon the upcoming theme of the outreach event, which will be about data reuse and data dissemination. So I can see a question while I speak data space for intangible performing. Actually, the data space for cultural heritage is supposed to have all cultural and cultural heritage related materials. So that should be included in that one. And that's very interesting because this is really about how you change the scope of the collection data that you used to have in the Europeana portal to all cultural and cultural heritage related material that you may have in the data space to come. Fulgencio, I see you popping up. Do you want to complement on that?
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, so we are responsible for that, and that is also coming from the main framework, which is the recommendation for which we have talked so much. In the recommendation, it is specified very clearly that intangible heritage is one of the types that we should cover, even though we haven't done that much in the years. And actually, from the three categories that we are following for the recommendation, from the three targets, so remember, the first is risk, the second are the most visited, and the third one is actually envisaging the intangible, which is the least digitized categories and so on. And that was really focusing on tangible. Now, what is the relevant aggregator for this? I think we don't have yet any particular or any specific consortium or aggregator, but we will be working on it for sure.
There should be part of intangible heritage among all the domain and thematic aggregators, and probably also in the national aggregators, that's for sure. But this is exactly the purpose of those events also is like really, if you have any question, maybe just get in touch also with the European Aggregators Forum so that we can actually gather ourselves and really discuss concretely how we can proceed. So actually, yes, we started with the main purpose of why we are publishing this data. We have seen some of the tools and the whole process, the actual process in how you process the data and how you actually end up in publishing and validating the data that is being transformed together with the cultural heritage institution. And then the next step there is actually how you actually reuse and disseminate this data. So that would be for the next outreach event, which is planned for the 20th of June next year. In the meantime, I'm sure you have gathered all the contact details that we have put while we were speaking this morning. Of course, the steering group of the Europeana Aggregators Forum is at your disposal if you have any question or any further interrogation on how you could actually participate to the data space. So now I think I have 3 minutes left to actually invite you to when you will log out to fill in the survey to make sure that you are actually giving us feedback on the event. I have to thank all of you to stay to have attended this meeting today, this webinar. For the reactions, and also I would like to thank very much all the speakers, the panelists, the colleagues who made the demonstrations as well. Of course, the steering group of the European Aggregators Forum, and especially my vice chair and Tom, and of course the people at the foundation, without who we won't be able to run these webinars, Tamara, Gina, and so on. Thank you all. I think I didn't forget anything. So yes, Christmas is coming. Let's hope for the best for this data space to come. Reach out to us if any question. We will of course share the slides, the demo. Adina already put the links, so you can catch up with the previous episode if you need to. And we will for sure update with this one as well. And I think that's pretty much all. Thank you all very much, and see you very soon.